The protagonist, Miho, was on her way to visit her hospitalized grandmother with her parents. Her grandmother had been told she had only a short time left to live, and she was spending her final days in a hospital deep in the mountains, far from any town. For Miho's father, she was his own mother. But Miho's mother was not pleased about this visit. "You're only the second son, after all. What's the point of visiting her in that condition? She wouldn't even know whether we came or not." As her mother voiced her dissatisfaction, her father quietly replied, "My older brother doesn't have any children. So at the very least, I want Miho to see her." For Miho, this would be the first time she had ever met her grandmother. Rocked by the car, the family arrived at the quiet mountain hospital. Looking up at the building, Miho's mother muttered under her breath, "As gloomy as ever." Her mother was usually kind, but when it came to her grandmother, there was always a strange coldness. Dark clouds were beginning to spread across the sky, and the air felt heavy, as if rain could fall at any moment. Led by a nurse, Miho entered her grandmother's room. A strange uneasiness stirred in her chest. She couldn't tell whether it was fear or anxiety, but something inside her felt wrong. Waiting in the room was her grandmother, connected to medical equipment, drained of color, and so thin she looked like nothing but skin and bones. Veins stood out on her dry hands, and several tubes were attached to her stomach. When Miho saw her, she gasped. Scary. She could hardly believe the woman in front of her was still alive. Just then, a doctor appeared and said he needed to speak with her parents. "Miho, wait here," her mother said, leaving the room behind. Miho hated being left alone. But when she was told firmly once more, she had no choice but to stay silent and nod. Soon, only Miho and her grandmother remained in the room. Outside, thunder began to rumble, and heavy rain struck the windows. The room slowly sank into darkness. Just as Miho could no longer bear it and tried to leave, it happened. "Wait." Her grandmother spoke. That was what Miho thought at first. But she was wrong. The voice did not come through her ears. It echoed directly inside her mind, as if through telepathy. Her grandmother said she would die tomorrow. And before that, there was someone she desperately wanted to see one last time. It was her younger brother, from whom she had been separated when they were children. Then her grandmother revealed a single wish to Miho. "Just for one day, lend me your body." For that one day, Miho would live in her grandmother's body. Naturally, Miho refused. Even if it was only for a day, she could never accept spending time in such a frail, broken body. She would grant any other wish. But not that one. Then her grandmother smiled sadly and spoke to her. "I see. I suppose that's impossible. Still, just being able to speak with you was enough. It was too lonely to go like this. Thank you, Miho. Now go on. Goodbye. Take care of yourself." Hearing those words, Miho felt as though she was finally beginning to understand her grandmother's deep loneliness. Her grandmother had no time left. Miho made up her mind. Just for one day. Her grandmother thanked her again and again. The moment Miho gently touched her grandmother's hand, a bolt of lightning struck near the hospital, and a blinding flash filled the room. Then Miho lost consciousness. The next day, the grandmother, now in Miho's body, went to see the person she had longed to meet more than anyone else. With a small child's body, she ran through the mountain path and reached the house without hesitation. Inside was an elderly man, bedridden and unable to move. Like the grandmother, he was connected to medical equipment and treated coldly by his family. The grandmother felt her heart ache at the sight. But the man was not her younger brother. The person she had truly wanted to see was her first love, the one she had once loved deeply, but had never been able to marry because their parents had chosen someone else for them. The two of them quietly rejoiced at their reunion. Then the grandmother smiled and said, "If we meet on the other side, let's talk a lot this time. Forever and ever." But then, his family discovered them. Not knowing the truth, they thought the grandmother, in Miho's body, was an intruder and called the police. Soon after, Miho's mother arrived and scolded her harshly. "You even stole your parents' wallet? What do you think you're doing?" And then she slapped her. At that moment, the grandmother noticed that the sun was already beginning to set. Back at the hospital, Miho was still suffering in her own body. Thinking of that, the grandmother snatched her mother's wallet and ran away, desperately heading back to the hospital. Meanwhile, Miho, trapped inside the grandmother's body, was enduring unimaginable pain. She couldn't breathe. Her whole body felt like it was burning. She thought she might die like this. But no sound came out, and not even tears would fall. The nurses were too busy to notice the silent scream in her heart. Meanwhile, the grandmother kept running through the mountain path, even as she stumbled and fell. A child's short legs could not carry her forward easily. Time passed cruelly, and she could only think of Miho's suffering. She ran on with one thought alone: she had to save Miho. And then, as if their wishes had reached someone, the grandmother made it back to the hospital room just in time. Miho let out a breath of relief at last. The grandmother kept thanking her over and over again. Watching her, Miho felt, for the first time, that her decision had not been wrong. Then, as she had foretold, the grandmother passed away. 30 years later. Today was Miho's mother's funeral. Her mother had spent the last 3 years of her life just like the grandmother had, connected to life support equipment. And for those 3 years, Miho had been the one caring for her. Alone in the empty room, Miho murmured softly, "I'm truly sorry for what I did to Miho. I guess I just couldn't go back after all." With those words, the truth was revealed. On that day, when the lightning struck, the one who died was not the grandmother, but the soul of 12-year-old Miho. The grandmother had continued living for 30 years in Miho's body. The grandmother smiled quietly. "I still had something left to do. Because it wouldn't be fair, would it? She should suffer too. Unwanted life support. Isolation in a hospital deep in the mountains. Because that's what that woman did to me." And then the grandmother, wearing Miho's face, twisted into a sinister smile and said one last thing. "It wouldn't be fair, would it, if it was only me?" This story is Grandma, one of the episodes from the popular Japanese TV series Tales of the Unusual, which aired in the fall of 2001. Even more than 20 years after its broadcast, it is still remembered as one of the works with an especially bitter aftertaste. What makes this story so memorable is not the final twist itself, but the way it builds up to it. The grandmother says a final goodbye to the man she loved in her youth but could never be with, and then desperately tries to make it back to the hospital so she can return her body to her granddaughter, Miho. In this summary, I left out some parts, but the story even shows her being dropped off because she doesn't have enough money for the taxi, and then continuing to run through the mountain road while stumbling and falling. Seeing that, many viewers would naturally think, this is going to be a sad but heartwarming ending. And that would make sense. Tales of the Unusual is a series best known for horror and suspense, but it is also famous for occasionally airing emotional stories and even comedy episodes. That is why viewers let their guard down and assume, oh, this must be one of the touching ones. But that expectation is completely shattered in the final seconds. The grandmother never returned Miho's body, and instead continued living as Miho for the next 30 years. The reason was revenge against her daughter-in-law. Looking back on the story, it really does seem as though the grandmother intended to give Miho's body back. She cries when she reunites with her old lover, runs desperately to get back to the hospital, and grows increasingly frantic as time runs out. Nothing about her behavior seems fake. That is why it is easy to believe she truly meant to return the body until the very end. But in that final moment, her desire for revenge outweighed everything else. That single choice stole a young girl's entire life forever. And what makes it even more heartbreaking is that Miho trusted her grandmother until the very end and acted only with kindness. She accepted her grandmother's plea, understood her suffering, and gave up her body at the risk of her own life. And yet Miho died at the age of 12, never knowing the truth, and never even getting her own body back. Meanwhile, Miho's mother never realizes that the daughter she has been caring for is actually the grandmother inside Miho's body. She ends up suffering the very same treatment she once inflicted on her mother-in-law. In that sense, the revenge is complete. But when you think about who was truly the most pitiful person in this story, it is still Miho. The only one who stayed kind to the very end, thinking of her grandmother Sake, lost her entire life without receiving anything in return. That is why this work is remembered not just as a twist ending, but as a deeply disturbing masterpiece that continues to linger in the minds of so many viewers. If you enjoyed Japanese horror stories like this, consider subscribing. And if this story gave you chills, leave a like.